Part 1A: A fighter born from urgency. In the spring of 1940, Britain stood alone beneath darkening skies. German bombers had already proven that air superiority was not a luxury but a lifeline. Across the Atlantic, in the drafting rooms of North American aviation in California, a bold promise was made. Instead of merely producing Curtiss P-40 fighters under license, engineers proposed something new, something faster, cleaner, more ambitious. Within months, sketches became aluminum and rivets. The result was an aircraft that seemed almost too elegant for the brutality awaiting it. The early Mustang was not yet the legend it would become, but its lines hinted as destiny. The laminar flow wing reduced drag in a way that felt almost futuristic. The fuselage stretched long and sleek, built for speed rather than brute thickness. Test pilots reported a sensation of smoothness at high velocity, as if the aircraft sliced through air with deliberate grace. Yet beauty in wartime must prove itself. The first Mustangs flew reconnaissance missions over occupied Europe under British markings, skimming low across coastlines and rail yards, gathering intelligence while anti-aircraft fire clawed at the sky. The engine at first limited altitude performance, but the airframe showed promising stability, responsiveness, and a hunger for refinement. In factory hangars lit by harsh industrial lamps, mechanics sensed they were touching something exceptional. War accelerates evolution. What began as a pragmatic response to British desperation was quietly transforming into a machine that would change the strategic calculus of the air war. No one yet called it the Cadillac of the sky, but the metaphor was already forming. It was refined, powerful, and built for distance. Soon, it would be asked to escort heavy bombers deep into the heart of Germany, a task that had claimed too many lives already. The Mustang's story would not be one of mere performance, but of endurance, partnership, and the fragile thread of hope stretched across hostile skies. Part 2A: The Merlin Awakening. Everything changed when the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine was mated to the Mustang's airframe. It was a union that felt almost mythic, British engineering heart beating inside an American body. The transformation was immediate and profound. The Merlin gave the Mustang altitude, a real altitude, and with it, authority. Superchargers pushed power into thinning air, allowing the aircraft to climb above 30,000 feet without losing breath. Test flights revealed speeds that startled even seasoned observers. The Mustang could now outrun many adversaries and sustain performance where bombers needed protection most. Pilots described the engine's roar as controlled fury, a smooth, relentless thrust that seemed to stretch the horizon closer. In the cockpit, visibility was better than many contemporaries, the bubble canopy offering a panoramic view that felt almost luxurious compared to the cramped fighters of earlier years. Yet this luxury was functional. Spotting an enemy seconds earlier could mean survival. By late 1943, the P-51B and P-51C variants began appearing in European skies under U.S. Army Air Forces command. Their arrival coincided with one of the most desperate chapters of the air war. American heavy bombers B-17S and B-24S had ventured deep into German territory without adequate escort, suffering catastrophic losses. Schwert and Regensburg were etched in memory with smoke and falling aircraft. The Mustang's extended range, thanks to drop tanks slung beneath its wings, allowed it to accompany bombers all the way to Berlin and back. This was revolutionary. For the first time, the Luftwaffe could not simply wait until escort fighters turned home. The sky over Germany was no longer theirs alone. The Mustang was not merely faster or higher, it was present everywhere the bombers needed it to be. And in that presence lay a shift in momentum. The war in the air was no longer one-sided. The Cadillac of the sky had found its purpose. Part 3A: Escort into the Abyss. Winter over Germany was merciless. At altitude, temperatures plunged far below freezing, oxygen masks frosting at their edges. In tight formations, silver bombers drone forward like floating cities, their bomb bays heavy with intent. Above and around them, Mustangs wove protective arcs. Pilots scan constantly as sun glare, cloud shadows, distant specks resolving into enemy fighters. When the Luftwaffe struck, it did so with desperation. Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulf stuffed through flak bursts, aiming for the vulnerable bombers. That was when the Mustangs unleashed their speed. Diving with predatory precision, they intercepted attackers before they could line up a shot. 6.50 caliber machine guns stitched fire across wings and fuselages. The Mustang's acceleration in a dive was electrifying, its controls firm yet responsive. Pilots spoke of feeling connected to the machine as if through nerve endings. Yet there was no romance in the chaos. Tracers crossed in lethal patterns. Aircraft spiraled downward trailing smoke. Radios crackled with clipped commands and desperate calls. The Mustang's range meant that escorts remained until the final bomb release and beyond, chasing retreating fighters back toward their airfields. Gradually, the Luftwaffe's experienced pilots dwindled. Fuel shortages and relentless pressure eroded German resistance. The Mustang did not win the war alone, but it altered the equation. Strategic bombing became sustainable. Factories, railways, and refineries faced persistent assault. The psychological effect was profound. German pilots now expected American fighters overhead even above their own cities. The sky had become contested territory in a way it had never been before. For bomber crews glancing out small plexiglass windows and seeing a Mustang cruising nearby, the sight was reassurance made metal. It meant they were not alone. Part 4: The Human Bond. Inside the cockpit, war became personal. The Mustang's controls vibrated under gloved hands. The smell of fuel and heated oil lingered. Pilots gave their aircraft names: Old Crow, Big Beautiful Doll, painting nose art that hinted at longing for home. The Mustang's long range meant long hours alone above cloud layers, time to think between bursts of violence. Some pilots were barely 20. They learned to trust the aircraft's responsiveness, its forgiving stall characteristics compared to earlier fighters. It was fast, yes, but it was also steady, a machine that rewarded discipline. Aces emerged, but so did quiet professionals who simply returned from mission after mission. The Mustang became more than hardware, it was a companion. When damaged, mechanics patched bullet holes with meticulous care. Every sortie felt like a shared gamble between pilot and machine. Letters home rarely captured the fear, only fragments of exhilaration and exhaustion. The war aged these young men quickly. They watched friends fail to return, scanning empty skies where formation partners should have been. Yet each dawn, engines turn over again. The Mustang carried not only firepower but fragile hopes of survival. Part 5: Breaking the Luftwaffe. By 1944, the air war shifted decisively. Mustangs roamed freely over Germany, no longer tethered strictly to bomber formations. They hunted rail yards, airfields, and any aircraft daring to rise. The Luftwaffe faced an adversary that could climb high, dive fast, and remain in the fight for hours. Attrition took its toll. Veteran German pilots were irreplaceable. Training programs shortened, fuel dwindled. The Mustang's presence was relentless. Allied air superiority became tangible. Factories burned under repeated raids. Transportation networks fractured. The Mustang symbolized not just tactical success, but strategic inevitability. It was mobility weaponized, endurance turned into dominance. Yet victory carried weight. The skies over Europe were littered with wreckage from both sides. For every triumphant return, there were empty bunks and barracks. The Mustang's story was entwined with sacrifice. Part 6a. After the fire. When the war ended in 1945, Mustangs continued to fly over victory parades, across oceans, into new conflicts. Some were sold to other nations, their service extended into Korea and beyond. The polished aluminum gleamed under peacetime sun, yet shadows lingered. Pilots returned to civilian life carrying memories that no air show could erase. The Mustang became an icon, restored and preserved, its engine roar now celebrated rather than feared. But beneath the shine lay history carved in frostbitten altitudes and tracer-lit nights. It had been the guardian of bombers, the long-armed escort that carried hope into hostile skies. It had altered the balance of power not through brute force alone, but through reach and reliability. Part 7. The Cadillac of the Sky. There was something poetic in the name. Cadillac evokes luxury, precision, smooth power. Yet in war, luxury is measured in survival. The P-51 Mustang earned its title not because it was indulgent, but because it delivered performance with refinement. It carried men farther than they had ever flown into enemy territory and brought many of them back. It reshaped strategic bombing, forced the Luftwaffe into defensive desperation, and helped tilt the balance of the Second World War. When one sees a Mustang climb today against a blue horizon, propeller cutting sunlight into flashes, it is impossible not to sense both pride and gravity. It represents innovation forged under pressure, beauty entwined with violence. In the thin air above Europe, it once stood between destruction and deliverance. And in that role, it became more than a fighter aircraft. It became reassurance made visibly a silver guardian escorting hope through darkness. In the vast silence that follows the thunder of engines, the sky remembers. It remembers silver wings guarding lumbering bombers, remembers frost on oxygen masks and the tremor of gunfire. The P-51 Mustang did not simply fly, it carried endurance into the heart of darkness. And in doing so, it helped carve a path toward the fragile light of victory.